I still remember the exact moment my life split into before and after. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no violence, just a text message that arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday while I was working late at the office we'd built together. "We need to talk, all three of us, tomorrow morning. It's important." From Jake, my best friend since we were 7 years old, my business partner, my brother in everything but blood. I stared at those words, feeling something cold settle in my chest. The "we" told me everything I needed to know. The "all three of us" confirmed my worst fear. Because the only three that mattered was me, Jake, and Emma. Emma, the woman I'd been planning to propose to that weekend. The woman who'd looked me in the eyes 3 nights earlier and said she loved me while we lay tangled in sheets, her fingers tracing patterns on my chest. I didn't sleep that night, just sat in our office, the startup we'd built from nothing over 6 years, and watched the city lights blur through windows we'd cleaned ourselves when we couldn't afford a service. Every surface in that room held a memory. The conference table we'd bought used off Craigslist. The whiteboard still covered in our original business plan sketches. The photo of us on the wall, arms around each other, holding our first real check from a client. Brothers, that's what we'd called ourselves. I was so fucking naive. I mean, they were already there when I arrived at the coffee shop Emma had suggested. Our coffee shop, the place where I'd first told her I loved her, where Jake and I had planned our company strategy over 1,000 cups of burnt coffee and stale pastries. Even that they'd taken, even that sacred ground. Emma wouldn't look at me. That told me everything before anyone spoke. Jake at least had the decency to meet my eyes, though what I saw there wasn't guilt. It was pity. And somehow, that was worse. "How long?" I asked. My voice sounded normal, calm. Strange how you can sound so steady when everything inside you is screaming. 6 months, Jake said, not Emma. She still couldn't look at me. 6 months. Half a year of lies, half a year of her kissing me while fucking him, half a year of Jake clapping me on the shoulder, calling me brother while he was sleeping with the woman I loved. "I'm sorry," Emma finally whispered. "We didn't mean for it to happen." I almost laughed, that fucking cliché, as if betrayal is ever accidental, as if you just trip and fall into someone else's bed, as if 6 months of deliberate deception is somehow blameless. "We tried to fight it," Jake added. "God, David, we really did, but don't." I held up my hand. "Don't you dare make this sound noble. Don't make this sound like some tragic love story where you two are the victims of uncontrollable passion. You made choices every day for 6 months. You both chose to lie to me." "You're right," Jake said quietly. "You're absolutely right." Emma was crying now. Soft, pretty tears that once would have destroyed me, would have made me want to comfort her, fix whatever was wrong, make everything okay. Now I felt nothing, just cold, just empty. "I need you to know something," Emma said, finally looking at me. "I did love you, I do love you, but what Jake and I have—" "I don't care." And I meant it. I don't care about your feelings, or your justifications, or your fucking love story. I have one question for Jake, and then I'm done with both of you. Jake tensed. He knew me well enough to hear the danger in my voice. "The company," I said. "Are you screwing me there too?" His silence was answer enough. "Jesus Christ," I stood up. "How bad?" "David, how fucking bad, Jake." He pulled out papers, slid them across the table. I didn't need to read past the first page to understand. He'd been repositioning himself for months, quiet changes to our operating agreement, new investors who were loyal to him, board seats I'd approved without reading the fine print because I'd trusted him. My 50% had been diluted to 37, his 50 had grown to 56, and the new bylaws gave him final decision-making authority on all major business decisions. He'd taken the company, our company. The thing we'd built together with our blood and sweat and years of our lives. This was always the plan, wasn't it? I said softly. The relationship with Emma, that was real. But this, you've been planning this for over a year. The business needed strong leadership, Jake said. You're brilliant, David, the most creative thinker I've ever met. But you're not a businessman. You're a dreamer, and dreams don't scale. There it was, the truth beneath the betrayal. He didn't just want Emma, he wanted everything. The company, the success, the story where he was the visionary founder and I was just the early partner who'd helped in the beginning. I was being erased. I'll buy you out, Jake continued. Fair market value. You'll walk away with almost $4 million. Most people would kill for that kind of exit. Most people didn't build the company. We both built it, but I'm the one who can take it to the next level. You have to see that. I looked at him, really looked at him, trying to find any trace of the kid I'd grown up with, the one who'd cried at my father's funeral, the one who'd slept on my floor for a month when his parents were divorcing, the one who'd sworn we'd always have each other's backs. He was gone. Or maybe he'd never existed. Maybe I'd just been projecting loyalty onto someone who was always capable of this. Okay, I said. They both looked surprised. Okay, Emma repeated. I'll take the buyout. I'll sign whatever you need me to sign. I'm done. Relief flooded Jake's face. He'd expected a fight, expected lawyers and drama and a battle that would destroy us both. He should have known me better than that. I don't fight battles I can't win. I fight wars. The next 3 months were a study in controlled dissent. I signed the papers, took the money, watched Jake and Emma build their life together while I dismantled mine. I sold my apartment, ended my lease on the car, cut ties with mutual friends who awkwardly tried to stay neutral and ended up choosing them because they were the winners and I was the cautionary tale. People treat failure like it's contagious. I stopped going to the gym we'd all shared, stopped frequenting restaurants where I might see them, became a ghost in my own city. The darkness came slowly then all at once, not the dramatic darkness of movies where the hero descends into obvious madness. Just the quiet kind, the kind where you realize you've been sitting in the same chair for 6 hours and don't remember what you were thinking about. The kind where food tastes like nothing and sleep is either impossible or the only thing you want to do. I'd wake up at 2 a.m. with my heart pounding, replaying every moment I'd missed, every time I'd trusted when I should have questioned, every sign I'd ignored, Emma laughing too hard at Jake's jokes, the way they'd started having private conversations that stopped when I entered a room, how she'd begun pulling away from me sexually, claiming stress, while apparently having plenty of energy for him. The memories were torture, each one a fresh wound, but pain is just information, and I was learning. My breaking point came on a random Tuesday. I was walking past a newsstand and saw Jake's face on the cover of a tech magazine. The founder who's revolutionizing digital marketing. Inside was a 6-page feature about his vision, his innovation, his company. My name appeared once in the acknowledgements. Thanks to early team members who helped in the initial stages. Early team member. I'd conceived the original idea. I'd coded the first prototype. I'd landed our first 10 clients through sheer force of will and 80-hour work weeks, and I was an early team member. That's when something inside me shifted. The grief transformed, crystallized into something harder, colder, more focused. Rage, not the hot kind, not the kind that makes you stupid, the cold kind, the kind that clears your mind and sharpens your purpose. Jake thought he'd won, thought I'd taken my money and slunk away to lick my wounds and eventually move on. He was wrong. I started with research. Deep, obsessive research. I created fake profiles on every social media platform, different names, different faces, different lives. I infiltrated Jake's world from a dozen angles he'd never see. I studied him, really studied him, his patterns, his relationships, his business practices, his weaknesses. Jake was brilliant, but he was also lazy in the way successful people often are. He'd started believing his own press, started thinking his success was purely merit-based, rather than partially built on my work and partially built on luck and timing. That arrogance was exploitable. I also studied the company, our company, his company. Now I tracked every deal, every partnership, every investor relationship. I built spreadsheets, created timelines, mapped out the entire ecosystem, and I found cracks. The business was growing fast, too fast. Jake was taking on debt to fuel expansion, making promises to investors that would be hard to keep, cutting corners on quality to hit growth metrics that looked good in presentations but weren't sustainable. The foundation was shaky. It just didn't look that way from the outside, but I'd helped build that foundation. I knew exactly where the weight-bearing walls were and where the cracks hid. I spent the next year becoming someone new, not David Chen, failed founder and betrayed friend. That person was dead. I became something harder, sharper, more dangerous. I took my buyout money and invested it carefully. No stupid plays, no revenge of the Bitcoin millionaire, just smart, boring, diversified investments that grew steadily. I also started consulting, using a different name, a different brand, positioning myself as a strategic advisor for tech companies. I was good at it. Better than I'd expected. Turned out, all those years building the company had taught me more than I'd realized. Within 18 months, I had clients. Within 2 years, I had a reputation. Within 3 years, I had leverage. I also transformed myself physically. Not out of some misguided idea that looking good was revenge, but because discipline breeds discipline, I needed to prove to myself that I could commit to something hard and see it through. 6 a.m. every morning, gym, then work, then study, then planning. I learned everything I could about corporate warfare, hostile takeovers, strategic undermining, how to destroy a company from the inside without leaving fingerprints. I read constantly. Psychology, negotiation, strategy, the art of war applied to business, and I planned. God, did I plan? My opportunity came in year 4. One of my consulting clients was acquired by VentureCap, a major investment firm. The partner who led the deal, Richard Morrison, was impressed with my work. "You have a gift for seeing the reality behind the presentation," he told me, over drinks. "Most consultants tell clients what they want to hear. You tell them what they need to know." "I prefer truth to comfort," I said. "Rare quality." He studied me. "I'm always looking for people who can do deep due diligence on potential investments. Someone who can find the problems before we write the check. Interested?" I pretended to think about it, but I'd been engineering this moment for months. "What kind of companies?" "Tech, primarily, growth stage, the kind that look great on paper but might be hiding issues. I'd need significant equity in the deals I evaluate, not just consulting fees." He raised an eyebrow. "Confident?" "Good at my job," he laughed. "Well, let's start with one. Prove yourself. Then we'll talk about equity." 3 weeks later, he sent me a target. Jake's company. I stared at the email for a long time. This wasn't coincidence. I'd been steering toward this moment for months. Casual mentions in the right circles. Strategic positioning. Making sure Richard knew I existed and had specific expertise in Jake's market. But seeing it actually happen, that was different. VentureCap was considering a major investment. $50 million for a 30% stake. It would value Jake's company at over $160 million, would make him genuinely wealthy, would validate everything he'd done, and I was going to be the one doing due diligence. I didn't smile, didn't celebrate, just got to work. The deep dive took 6 weeks. I was thorough, exhaustive. I examined every financial statement, every contract, every partnership agreement. I interviewed former employees under the guise of general industry research. I mapped out the entire business model. And I found exactly what I knew I'd find. The growth was real, but it was expensive, unsustainably expensive. Customer acquisition costs were higher than Jake was reporting. Churn was worse than projected. The partnership deals that looked impressive on paper had clauses that heavily favored the partners. Jake had also been playing games with the metrics, not illegal games, just creative accounting, recognizing revenue early, capitalizing expenses that should have been written off, making quarterly numbers look better than they were. Again, not illegal, just misleading. The company was a house of cards that looked like a mansion. I compiled everything into a report, 47 pages of detailed analysis with supporting documentation. Then I sat with it for a week, thinking. I could destroy Jake right now, show Richard everything. Venture cap would walk away. Other investors would hear rumors. The house of cards would collapse. Jake would lose everything. But
that felt too easy, too quick, too merciful. I wanted him to understand what he'd taken from me, wanted him to feel the slow erosion of everything he'd built, wanted him to know it was me. So I edited the report, kept the real findings, but softened the language, positioned the issues as areas requiring additional oversight and structural adjustment rather than fundamental problems, made it sound fixable with the right guidance. Then I added a recommendation: investment viable with mandatory conditions including board restructuring, financial controls, and operational oversight. Recommend staged funding contingent on hitting modified milestones. Also recommend placement of experienced operational advisor with board authority. Richard called me 2 days after receiving the report. This is excellent work, thorough, balanced. You found issues, but also provided solutions. That's the job. The board advisor you recommended, do you have someone in mind? I do, I said.
me. Well, the deal closed 3 months later. Venture Cap invested $40 million, 10 less than originally discussed because of my findings, and I got a board seat plus operational oversight authority plus 2% equity in the company. I was back inside the thing I'd built, with power, with leverage, with time. Jake didn't recognize me at first. I looked different, carried myself differently, used my middle name, Michael, professionally now. When he finally realized who I was, I watched the color drain from his face. We were in a conference room, just the two of us and Richard, the first board meeting after the deal closed. "David," Jake said quietly. "Hello, Jake. What are you doing here?" "Michael is our operational advisor," Richard said, looking between us. "Do you two know each other?" "We used to work together," I said smoothly. "Years ago, different company, I'm sure Jake remembers." The threat was implicit. I could tell Richard everything about how this was our company originally, about how Jake had pushed me out. It would complicate things, raise questions about Jake's character and judgment. Jake understood immediately. "Of course," he said carefully. "Good to see you again." "You too," I smiled. "I'm looking forward to working together." Or the next 18 months were a masterclass in systematic destruction. I didn't do anything obvious, didn't sabotage, didn't cheat, just applied pressure in all the right places. I questioned every decision Jake made in board meetings, not aggressively, just reasonably. asking for data, requesting projections, demanding accountability. I insisted on hiring a CFO loyal to the board rather than to Jake, someone who would report actual numbers, not creative ones. I pushed for operational changes that were technically correct, but killed Jake's agility. More process, more oversight, more bureaucracy. I slowly turned the other board members against him, not through lies, just
through truth delivered strategically, letting them see the same issues I'd seen, the same cracks in the foundation. And I watched Jake struggle. He'd been used to moving fast, trusting his instincts, operating like a founder king. Now every decision was questioned, every metric scrutinized, every misstep highlighted. The company started missing targets, not catastrophically, just consistently, enough that investors got nervous. Jake aged visibly. The stress was eating him. I'd see him in meetings looking exhausted, defensive, desperate. Good. Emma left him after a year. I heard about it through the network I'd built. Apparently, the pressure of the struggling company had created pressure at home. They'd started fighting. She'd started questioning whether he was the person she'd thought. The irony was delicious. I didn't reach out to her, didn't care enough. She was collateral damage. The betrayal I cared about was Jake's. The final move came in month 23 of
my board tenure. VentureCap was getting ready to write down their investment. The company was failing to hit milestones. The second tranche of funding, $20 million that was supposed to come at 18 months, had been delayed indefinitely. Without that money, the company would run out of cash in 4 months. Richard called an emergency board meeting. "We need to discuss options," he said grimly. "The company is burning $2 million a month and revenue isn't growing fast enough to change the trajectory." "We could bring in a new CEO," one of the other board members suggested. "Fresh leadership." All eyes turned to Jake. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I founded this company," he said quietly. "I built it from nothing. You can't just—" "You built it with help," I interrupted. "Help you later pushed out, help you rewrote the history of. Let's not pretend you're some solo genius." The room went silent. This was the first time I'd referenced our history publicly. "What are you talking about?" Richard asked. "Jake and I co-founded this company," I said calmly. "I owned 50% originally, conceived the core product, built the initial client base. Then Jake systematically diluted my equity and forced me out. That's who you're defending, someone who destroys partnerships when it's convenient." Jake looked like he might vomit. "Is this true?" Richard demanded. "It's more complicated than—" "Yes or no, Jake? Did you force out your co-founder?" Jake's silence was answer enough. Richard looked at me. "Why didn't you mention this during due diligence?" "Because it wasn't relevant to the investment decision. The company's problems are operational, not historical. But it is relevant to the question of leadership. You're debating whether to trust someone who's already demonstrated he'll betray a partner when it serves his interests." The other board members were looking at Jake with new suspicion. Everything he'd told them about the company's founding was now suspect. If he'd lied about that, what else was he lying about? "I have a proposal," I said. "VentureCap provides the second tranche of funding, but Jake steps down as CEO. We bring in professional management. Jake can stay as Chief Product Officer if he wants, but operational control goes to someone without his baggage." "And who would be CEO?" Richard asked. I didn't answer, didn't need to. Jake understood. I saw it in his eyes, the full scope of what I'd done, the years of planning, the strategic positioning, the slow, methodical destruction of everything he'd taken from me. "You," he said hoarsely. "This was always about you coming back." "No," I said. This is about competent leadership, but yes, I'm willing to step in temporarily for the good of the company, for the protection of the investment. The vote was 4-1. Jake was the only dissenting voice. He resigned the next day, took a small payout, and disappeared from the
industry. I heard later that he'd moved to Portland, was working at another startup in a junior role. His reputation had been quietly destroyed. Word travels fast in small industries, especially word about founders who betray their partners. I ran the company for 2 years, fixed the operational issues, corrected the accounting, built sustainable growth. Then I sold it. $200 million. Venture Cap got a 5x return on their investment. I walked away with 46 million after taxes. More money than I'd ever dreamed of back when Jake and I were sleeping on that shitty pull-out couch, eating ramen and building our future. I'm sitting in my apartment now, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city that once felt like it had no room for me. I rebuilt myself, became successful on my own terms, proved that Jake hadn't been the essential one, proved that I could win without him. The revenge was complete, perfect, surgical. So why do I feel empty?
Truth is, I didn't just destroy Jake, I destroyed myself. The person I became to get revenge, cold, calculating, ruthless. That's who I am now. I can't turn it off. Can't go back to being the naive kid who believed in loyalty and partnership and friendship. I have money, I have success. I have the satisfaction of knowing Jake lost everything he'd stolen from me. But I'm alone. I push people away because I can't trust them, can't be vulnerable, can't let anyone close enough to hurt me again. I destroyed Jake's life. And in doing so, I destroyed my own capacity for human connection. Last week, I got an email from Jake. Subject line, "I'm sorry." I stared at it for 3 days before opening it. The message was short. "David, I know you probably deleted this without reading, but on the off chance you didn't, I want you to know something. You were right about everything. I betrayed you. I justified it with bullshit about business and leadership and what the company and what
needed. But the truth is, I was jealous of your talent, your creativity, the way people naturally liked you. I took everything because I was insecure and afraid you'd always be better than me. I've had 5 years to think about what I did, to live with who I became. And I understand now that the worst thing I took wasn't the company or even Emma. It was your ability to trust, your belief that people could be good. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that destroying me didn't make us even. It made you the person I was. And I'm sorry for that too. I hope you find a way back to who you were before I ruined you. Jake. I read that email 20 times, trying to find the manipulation, the angle, the hidden agenda. But there wasn't one, just the truth, the terrible, unbearable truth. I'd won. And in winning, I'd lost everything that mattered. I'd become exactly what I'd hated. I'm writing this now because I need to understand what happened. Need to trace the line from that coffee shop where my life ended to this apartment where I have everything and nothing. Jake betrayed me. That's true. But what I did to him, the years of planning, the systematic destruction, the cold calculation, that was a choice. My choice. I could have taken the buyout and built something new. Could have let the anger go, could have proven myself without needing to destroy him. But I chose revenge, and revenge is a poison. You think you're administering it to your enemy, but you're swallowing it yourself every day, every plan, every small victory that feels hollow. I haven't responded to Jake's email. Don't know if I will. Part of me wants to tell him he's right, that I understand, that we both destroyed each other, and maybe that's justice of a kind. Part of me wants to delete it, to maintain the fiction that I'm the hero of this story, the wronged man who got his revenge, the winner. But I'm not the hero. There are no heroes here. Just two men who destroyed each other over money and ego, and a woman who wasn't worth either of our souls. I'm 41 years old. I have more money than I'll ever spend. I have respect in my industry. I have power. I have nothing. No friends, no partner, no one who actually knows me, because I can't let anyone know me. Can't let anyone see the emptiness inside. I won the war, but I lost myself in the fighting, and I don't know how to get back. There's a photo on my desk, one I've kept hidden for years. Me and Jake at 15, summer camp, arms around each other's shoulders, smiling like the world was full of possibility. We were best friends once, brothers, before money and ambition and betrayal turned us into enemies. I look at that photo sometimes, late at night when the city is quiet and I'm alone with my thoughts, and I wonder if that boy in the picture would be proud of the man I became. I don't think he would be. Tonight I'm going to do
something I haven't done in 7 years. I'm going to write back to Jake. Not to forgive him. Not to ask for forgiveness. Not to reconcile or heal or find closure. Just to acknowledge the truth. We destroyed each other. We were both the villain. And the real tragedy isn't that he betrayed me or that I got revenge. The real tragedy is that we let the worst parts of ourselves win. I'm typing now, hands shaking slightly, words appearing on the screen. Jake, you're right about all of it. I became the thing I hated, and I can't undo that. Can't go back to who I was before you betrayed me and I destroyed you. But I can stop pretending I was justified. Stop acting like my revenge was righteousness. We both made choices, bad ones, choices that killed the best parts of who we were. I don't forgive you. You don't deserve it. But I don't forgive myself either. We were brothers once, then we became enemies. Now we're just two broken men living with what we did to each
other. I hope you find peace. I really do, because I don't think I ever will. David. I stare at the email for a long time. Cursor hovering over send. This won't fix anything, won't undo the damage, won't restore what we destroyed. But maybe it's a step towards something. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just acknowledgement that we were both wrong. That revenge is empty, that winning can feel like losing, that some prices are too high to pay. I press send. The email disappears into the void, and I sit here in my expensive apartment with my expensive view and my expensive emptiness, victorious, destroyed, alone. This is my confession, my testimony, my warning to anyone who's been betrayed and thinks revenge will heal them. It won't. To anyone who thinks destroying your enemy will make you whole. It won't. To anyone who believes winning is worth becoming someone you hate, it isn't. I got everything I wanted, and I would give it all back to undo what I became. But you can't unbreak glass. You can't unfight wars. You can't become innocent again once you've learned to be ruthless. The city lights are beautiful tonight, bright and cold and distant. Like everything in my life, I built an empire of loneliness, and I'm the only one living in it. That's the real ending, not the revenge, not the victory, not the confrontation, just this. Silence, emptiness, the hollow sound of winning.